The movie We Live in Time has gained significant attention for its emotional depth, striking visuals, and powerful performances. It is not just another romantic drama but a story that beautifully explores the journey of two individuals as they navigate love, life, and the passage of time. In this video, we will dive into all aspects of this film, including what it is about, the technical details, behind-the-scenes facts, and a closer look at the cast and their performances. If you are visiting our channel for the first time, make sure to subscribe because today's discussion will give you everything you need to know about We Live in Time. The movie is directed by a filmmaker known for their ability to balance emotion with storytelling in a subtle yet effective way. The vision behind the film was to create something that speaks to both the heart and mind of the audience. From the first frame to the final scene, We Live in Time ensures that viewers remain emotionally invested. The storyline is rooted in human experiences and emotions, which makes it easy for the audience to connect with the characters on screen. In terms of technical departments, the film stands out for its cinematography. The visuals are rich, carefully framed, and carry a sense of intimacy that highlights the evolving relationship between the characters. Lighting is used to enhance the mood of each scene, whether it is the brightness of hope or the shadows of uncertainty. The production design captures the everyday realism of life while maintaining a sense of warmth and beauty. Costume design also plays a key role in defining the characters' personalities and their growth throughout the film. Music is another aspect where the film shines. The score is emotional without being overwhelming, supporting the narrative with melodies that linger even after the film ends. The background score builds tension and romance at the right moments, while the songs chosen for the soundtrack carry lyrical depth and complement the story. The sound department ensures that every dialogue and subtle sound is crisp and clear, helping to maintain the emotional flow of the narrative. When it comes to pre-production, the movie was carefully planned, with attention given to casting, script development, and location scouting. The filmmakers worked on creating authentic settings that would reflect the journey of the characters. Every location adds meaning to the story, giving the audience a chance to feel like they are part of the world being portrayed. During filming, the crew maintained a strong balance between naturalism and cinematic beauty, allowing the film to feel both real and artistic. The post-production process further enhanced the quality of the film. Editing was done in a way that keeps the story flowing smoothly, with scenes transitioning naturally from one moment to another. The pacing is deliberate, never rushing through important emotional beats while ensuring that the audience remains engaged. Color grading adds to the atmosphere, enhancing the emotions on screen while giving the film a polished, cinematic finish. In terms of budget and box office, We Live in Time was made with a moderate budget, yet it has managed to achieve remarkable success because of its storytelling power and strong word of mouth. It has already been considered a super hit by many critics and audiences alike, performing well not only in domestic markets but also internationally. The combination of relatable themes and high-quality filmmaking has ensured that it resonates with a wide range of viewers. The story itself is centered around love, growth, and the passage of time. Without revealing too many spoilers, it can be said that the plot follows two individuals whose paths cross in unexpected ways. Their relationship develops with honesty, vulnerability, and the challenges of real life. The film captures both the joys and struggles of love, making it more than just a typical romantic tale. It is a story about how time shapes relationships and how moments, both big and small, define the course of life. The performances of the star cast deserve special mention. The lead actors bring incredible depth to their roles, delivering chemistry that feels genuine and heartfelt. Their ability to portray both vulnerability and strength makes the characters memorable. Supporting cast members also contribute strongly, adding layers to the story and enriching the overall experience. Standout moments include heartfelt conversations, subtle gestures, and emotional climaxes that leave a lasting impression. Overall, We Live in Time is a film that combines excellent direction, thoughtful storytelling, and memorable performances to create a deeply moving cinematic experience. It is not just a film to watch but one to feel and reflect upon. The themes of love, time, and human connection are universal, making it relatable to audiences everywhere. Whether you are interested in the technical brilliance of filmmaking or simply want to experience a heartfelt story, this movie delivers on all fronts. Watching it is not just about entertainment but about experiencing the beauty and fragility of life through the lens of cinema. This makes We Live in Time one of the most engaging and meaningful films of recent years. It is a reminder that cinema has the power to touch our hearts, inspire us, and make us think about the time we have and the people we share it with. If you want to know more about its making, performances, and impact, be sure to watch this video until the very end, because every detail shared here will give you a complete understanding of why We Live in Time has become such a remarkable film. We Live in Time tells the decade-spanning story of Tobias Durand, played by Andrew Garfield, and Almut Brühl, played by Florence Pugh, in a deliberately non-linear romance that traces how two lives collide, fall in love, and confront impossible choices when illness arrives. The film opens with a chance, almost cinematic spark. Tobias, recently separated and on his way to sign divorce papers, is involved in a minor accident and is helped by Almut, an ambitious chef whose restless creativity and precise domestic rituals slowly draw Tobias into her orbit. Their relationship unfolds out of chronological order, with scenes shuffled to show key emotional beats rather than a straight timeline, which forces the audience to assemble the arc of their love through repeated images and echoes. Almut is introduced as a talented, driven Bavarian-influenced chef whose kitchen discipline masks a complicated interior life. Tobias is quieter and searching, recently separated and unsure what he wants, and their chemistry is immediate and tactile. Shared meals, small acts of care, and intimate conversations become the scaffolding of their connection. As their relationship deepens, we see both tender domestic scenes, Almut teaching Tobias to crack an egg the right way, and broader ambitions, including Almut's secret decision to enter an international cooking competition that becomes a key plot point revealing how her drive can both define and endanger the life she is building with Tobias. Roughly midway through the mosaic, the narrative reveals the devastating turn. Almut is diagnosed with advanced cancer. The script then moves between joyous early moments, fraught present-day decisions, and future grief, exploring the ethical and emotional choices that a couple faces when treatment promises either more months of quality life or a longer but harsher survival. Almut's character chooses agency over passivity, insisting on shaping how she will be remembered and trying to pursue professional achievement even as illness progresses. The film uses this choice to probe questions about legacy, parenthood, and whether a life defined by a singular achievement is worth the costs to intimate relationships. The non-linear style lets the viewer feel how memory works when grief is involved, mixing moments of hope and despair. The story gives particular weight to Almut and Tobias's small, human rituals, hospital visits that double as date nights, kitchen sequences that act as love scenes, school runs and missed pickups that expose tension around priorities, and a repeated motif of hesitation before major confessions. Their daughter Ella, played by Grace Delaney, anchors several scenes and raises the stakes of Almut's decisions. Almut's insistence on entering a major culinary contest is partly driven by a wish to leave Ella memories of her as an accomplished, public figure rather than only as a mother in treatment. Supporting roles include Aoife Hines, Adam James, Marama Corlett, and Grace Maloney, who populate the couple's world with co-workers, doctors, and friends whose responses to the central relationship highlight how private decisions become public dramas. Because the film is non-linear, revelations about prognosis, reconciliations, and final decisions arrive in surprising order, which can be emotionally disorienting but also deliberately so. The film asks the audience to feel the dissonance between memory and the present, between the desire to plan for the future and the need to live in each moment. Scenes that might have been predictable in chronological order instead gain poignancy when placed alongside an earlier joy or a later regret. The screenplay frames Almut's path not simply as a tragedy but as a meditation on how people insist on autonomy and purpose even as illness reduces control. Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh bring raw intimacy to their roles, and their chemistry is the emotional anchor of the film. The conclusion, assembled through these time jumps, underscores loss without turning to melodrama. Grief is present, but the film finishes by emphasizing memory, small habitual gestures, and the persistence of what two people taught one another. Almut's choices and Tobias's attempts to balance hope and acceptance are shown in moments rather than speeches, leaving the viewer to piece together how a life lived intensely for a short period can have an outsized emotional legacy. The film's technical choices, intimate cinematography, a spare but resonant score by Bryce Dessner, and editing that favors associative montage, support the story's emotional logic and keep the focus on performance and interiority. In short, We Live in Time is a fragmented, affecting portrait of a couple whose love is both ordinary and extraordinary because it is lived under the pressure of mortality. Andrew Garfield's Tobias and Florence Pugh's Almut guide the viewer through a relationship that is experienced in moments and remembered out of sequence, and the film ultimately becomes a meditation on how time shapes intimacy, loss, and the stories we leave behind. We Live in Time begins with a strikingly intimate image that sets the tone for everything to follow. Instead of a traditional opening that introduces characters in a linear fashion, the film begins mid-journey, signaling that time will not unfold in a straightforward manner. The very first moments feature Tobias Durand, played by Andrew Garfield, and Almut Brühl, played by Florence Pugh, already together in what seems like a settled domestic setting. This immediately places the audience inside their relationship, but before viewers can orient themselves, the film shifts backwards to the inciting incident that brought them together. Tobias, fresh from a failed marriage and weighed down by uncertainty, encounters Almut in a chance meeting that becomes the spark of their connection. This non-linear entry point tells the audience that memory and emotional resonance will guide the story more than strict chronology. The inciting incident is both simple and profound. Tobias is on his way to finalize his divorce when he meets Almut, a chef with a sharp sense of purpose and ambition. What begins as a fleeting, almost inconsequential meeting becomes the seed for the entire narrative. Their chemistry is subtle at first but undeniable, and the audience understands that this accident of timing will define the rest of their lives. The film uses this moment to set up the central question: how will these two people build a life together, and what will that life look like when tested by time and circumstance? The rising action unfolds through a tapestry of scenes presented out of order, each one highlighting a key stage in their relationship. We see Almut and Tobias fall into the routines of early love, sharing meals, moving into the same space, and carving out rituals that feel deeply personal. The film constantly jumps between different periods, showing them in both blissful early days and later struggles, asking the viewer to piece together how the fragments connect. One particularly memorable sequence shows Almut teaching Tobias a kitchen trick, a small but symbolic moment that becomes a motif throughout their story. These domestic details are as important as the larger narrative beats because they show how intimacy is built not in grand gestures but in repetition and shared time. The first major turning point arrives with Almut's revelation of her illness. Midway through the narrative, it is revealed that she has advanced cancer. Because the story is non-linear, the diagnosis is not presented as a sudden shock but instead layered into moments of joy and planning, making the impact heavier as the audience retroactively realizes what the characters are carrying. This choice to reveal her illness in fragments mirrors how people process devastating news, piecemeal, with denial and acceptance colliding. It changes the trajectory of the narrative entirely. What was once a story about love and building a family now becomes a meditation on mortality, legacy, and the difficult decisions that illness forces upon people. From here, the narrative tension grows. Almut, despite her diagnosis, pursues her culinary ambitions with a fierce determination. She enters a competition that symbolizes both her personal fulfillment and her wish to leave something lasting for her daughter Ella, played by Grace Delaney. Tobias, meanwhile, struggles with balancing support for Almut's choices with his own fears of loss. The audience witnesses the push and pull of love in the face of terminal illness, where every decision carries emotional weight. These middle sections of the film are some of its most powerful, blending tenderness with conflict and reminding viewers that love often means wrestling with impossible contradictions. The second major turning point comes when Almut's health begins to deteriorate more rapidly. The earlier sequences of ambition and energy are now contrasted with scenes of exhaustion, missed family moments, and hospital visits. Tobias's role shifts from equal partner to caretaker, and the film captures the quiet heroism in that transition. Yet even in decline, Almut's presence remains forceful, and the script avoids reducing her to just her illness. This duality is one of the strongest narrative choices, ensuring that the story is not about tragedy alone but about identity, memory, and love's endurance. The climax of the film is not a single dramatic scene but a collection of emotional peaks arranged through the fractured timeline. Viewers are shown moments of joy, Almut laughing with Tobias and Ella, sharing a meal, or making a small joke, intercut with the stark realities of her condition. The juxtaposition is what makes the climax land so powerfully. Instead of building to one explosive confrontation, the film crescendos emotionally, showing that the sum of their shared moments is more important than any singular event. The finale ties together the non-linear structure with deliberate ambiguity. We see Tobias in the aftermath, caring for Ella, carrying on routines that once belonged to Almut, and reflecting on how love lingers even when time runs out. The last scenes highlight memory rather than closure, asking the audience to sit with both grief and gratitude. The story ends not with finality but with continuity, reminding us that relationships shape us long after they end. By playing with time, We Live in Time transforms what could have been a straightforward romantic drama into something more layered and profound. The narrative choices force the audience to engage actively, piecing together the puzzle of Tobias and Almut's life, and in doing so, we feel the weight of time as they do, sometimes out of order, sometimes confusing, but always meaningful. The structure amplifies the emotional resonance, ensuring that the story lingers long after the final beat. The character development in We Live in Time is the backbone of the film's emotional impact. The story would not carry the same weight without the way its characters evolve, struggle, and reveal themselves in subtle, often understated ways. At its center are Tobias Durand, played by Andrew Garfield, and Almut Brühl, played by Florence Pugh. Around them, a handful of supporting characters shape their journey, offering mirrors, obstacles, and reflections that make their arcs feel layered and complete. Tobias begins the story as a man at a crossroads. He is fresh from a failed marriage, uncertain about his purpose, and reluctant to dive headfirst into anything new. When we first meet him, he is hesitant, soft-spoken, and slightly adrift, embodying someone who has allowed life to carry him rather than choosing a direction himself. His initial goal seems simple: to start over. But as his relationship with Almut develops, that vague desire sharpens into something more profound. Tobias wants stability, family, and the comfort of belonging. What stands in his way is his own passivity. He struggles with the weight of choices and avoids confrontation, which puts him in conflict with Almut's more forceful drive. The way Garfield plays Tobias is nuanced, with small gestures like a pause before answering, a nervous smile, or his reluctance to interrupt Almut, showing how his personality is shaped by restraint. His arc is about moving from passivity to presence, and the ultimate test of that comes when Almut falls ill. In those moments, Tobias grows into someone capable of shouldering responsibility and making the hard choices that love demands. Almut, in contrast, starts the story with fire and ambition. She is a chef, precise in her routines, and brimming with determination to leave her mark on the culinary world. Her early scenes show her teaching Tobias small skills in the kitchen, not just as a way of connecting but as a way of asserting her authority and confidence. Her goal is clear: she wants success, recognition, and a life defined by passion. But beneath that drive lies vulnerability. She masks fear with control, and when her illness is revealed, that control is taken from her piece by piece. What stands in her way is time itself, as her diagnosis forces her to confront the limits of ambition. Florence Pugh captures this duality with ease. A sharp line about Tobias's cooking can suddenly shift into a tender confession, showing how her exterior toughness hides softer needs. Almut's arc is not about surrender but about balance. She learns to allow Tobias to support her, to accept that achievement alone cannot define her life, and to find meaning in the family and love she built. The relationship between Tobias and Almut becomes a dynamic space for change. Early on, they are almost opposites. Tobias is passive, Almut is assertive. As the story progresses, their roles shift. Tobias grows stronger and more decisive, while Almut, faced with her illness, becomes more vulnerable and open. Their growth is not isolated but relational, as each character's transformation is tied to what the other brings out in them. The most telling moments are small: Tobias stepping into the kitchen with confidence to finish something Almut began, or Almut softening her perfectionism when she sees Tobias's effort. These gestures say more than words about how love reshapes people. The antagonist of the film is not a person but rather time and illness. Cancer acts as the invisible adversary, pushing against the characters' goals and reshaping their choices. It forces Tobias to confront his fear of responsibility and Almut to face the limits of control. The disease is not portrayed as a villain in the traditional sense but as a force that magnifies who the characters already are. Their responses to it reveal their deepest truths, making the illness both a plot device and a mirror. Side characters play meaningful roles in deepening this journey. Ella, their daughter, is perhaps the most important. Though young, she becomes the anchor that intensifies every choice Tobias and Almut make. Almut's decision to pursue her culinary competition despite her illness is partly motivated by a desire for Ella to see her as more than a mother in decline. Tobias's growth is clearest in his interactions with Ella, where his transformation from hesitant partner to committed father is most visible. Other supporting characters, like colleagues, doctors, and friends, may seem like background figures, but they contribute by framing the couple's world. Their presence shows how love and illness ripple outward, affecting not just individuals but entire communities. By the end of the film, both Tobias and Almut have changed in ways that are subtle yet profound. Tobias has become someone capable of carrying forward love and memory, transformed from passive observer to active participant in life. Almut, though her time is cut short, has shifted from being defined by ambition to embracing the fullness of what she already achieved in her family. Their arcs intertwine, showing that true character development is not about dramatic reinvention but about finding depth, resilience, and clarity in the face of life's hardest trials. We Live in Time is ultimately a study in how people grow together. Tobias learns strength through Almut, and Almut learns vulnerability through Tobias. The film captures these evolutions not with grand declarations but with small details: a look across a table, a hand held in silence, a memory shared. These moments create characters who feel lived in and real, reminding us that change often happens in quiet increments rather than dramatic transformations. The film's greatest strength lies in showing that who we are at the beginning is never who we remain, especially when love and loss reshape the contours of our lives. The performances in We Live in Time are the film's greatest strength, elevating what could have been a familiar romance into something deeply affecting and unforgettable. At the heart of the story are Andrew Garfield as Tobias Durand and Florence Pugh as Almut Brühl, whose chemistry and individual choices shape nearly every frame. Their work is so natural and lived in that the characters feel less like performances and more like people we might know, and the film thrives on that authenticity. Andrew Garfield disappears into Tobias with a quiet, restrained performance that grows in intensity as the story progresses. Early on, his hesitations and nervous body language perfectly capture a man who has been wounded by a failed marriage and is unsure of his place in the world. Garfield uses pauses and silences as effectively as dialogue, allowing Tobias's passivity to be felt in subtle ways. His voice often wavers slightly when speaking to Almut, a choice that communicates both vulnerability and awe at her confidence. As the narrative shifts and Tobias takes on the role of caretaker, Garfield's physicality changes. His posture becomes firmer, his gaze steadier, and his silences more decisive rather than hesitant. This evolution is never announced in words but is shown through his physical and vocal control. One of his strongest moments comes late in the film when Tobias reads aloud a story to Ella while Almut rests nearby. Garfield's soft delivery, tinged with quiet grief, captures the weight of love and loss without slipping into sentimentality. Florence Pugh delivers a performance that is both fiery and tender, and she may be the film's true centerpiece. Almut could have been written as a typical, strong woman facing tragedy archetype, but Pugh refuses to flatten her into something so simple. Instead, she infuses Almut with contradictions. She is controlling yet vulnerable, ambitious yet deeply maternal, tough yet capable of profound tenderness. Pugh's physicality is striking. In kitchen scenes, she moves with precision and confidence, commanding the space with a chef's authority. In intimate scenes with Tobias, her body softens, and her voice lowers into something warmer, more fragile. A standout moment comes when Almut confesses her fears to Tobias after her diagnosis. Pugh balances strength with heartbreak, her voice catching just slightly on certain words, suggesting the weight of unspoken truths. This ability to layer vulnerability under strength is what makes her performance unforgettable. Together, Garfield and Pugh create electric chemistry that drives the film. Their interactions feel spontaneous, filled with small touches, glances, and overlapping dialogue that mimic real intimacy. In one scene where Almut teaches Tobias how to crack an egg properly, the chemistry between them is palpable. What could have been a throwaway domestic detail becomes a moment charged with humor, affection, and flirtation. Later, in more painful scenes, that same chemistry turns into something heartbreaking, as the bond that once carried playfulness now carries grief. Their connection is so believable that the non-linear structure, which requires the audience to piece together different stages of their relationship, never feels disjointed. The performances anchor the timeline, making every stage of their love convincing. Grace Delaney, as Tobias and Almut's daughter Ella, deserves special mention. Child performances often risk feeling forced, but Delaney delivers with natural charm and innocence. She grounds the film's later acts by giving Tobias and Almut something concrete to fight for, and her scenes with Garfield are especially touching. One sequence where Tobias tries to reassure Ella during Almut's treatment lingers in memory because of Delaney's understated reactions, which feel genuine rather than rehearsed. Among the supporting cast, Aoife Hines and Adam James contribute strong, grounded performances as friends and colleagues who provide perspective on Tobias and Almut's choices. Hines in particular adds warmth in her limited screen time, creating a character who feels lived in even without extensive backstory. Marama Corlett and Grace Maloney also offer brief but effective turns that help flesh out the couple's wider world. None of the supporting performances overshadow the leads, but several stand out in small ways, especially when they reflect back the emotional stakes of Tobias and Almut's journey. If there is any weakness in the ensemble, it lies in a few moments where supporting roles feel more functional than deeply drawn. Certain colleagues and medical staff appear mainly to deliver exposition, and while the actors do their jobs capably, their presence does not linger beyond the scene. These moments remind us that the film is laser-focused on Tobias and Almut, sometimes at the expense of fully developing side characters. Still, this minor shortcoming does little to diminish the overall impact. What makes the performances in We Live in Time so powerful is how they turn written beats into living emotion. Garfield's hesitations, Pugh's layered toughness, Delaney's innocent warmth, and the supporting cast's grounded realism all combine to create a world that feels authentic. The chemistry between Garfield and Pugh is the film's beating heart, making their journey through love, ambition, and illness resonate long after the credits roll. It is a rare case where performances not only elevate the material but redefine it, ensuring that the story lingers in memory because the characters feel so deeply real. The direction of We Live in Time is one of the defining elements that gives the film its identity, blending subtle storytelling with strong emotional drive. John Crowley, known for his delicate handling of intimate stories, guides the film with a vision that emphasizes raw humanity over spectacle. From the very first frame, it is clear that the director wants the audience to feel immersed in the private lives of Almut and Tobias, played by Florence Pugh and Andrew Garfield. Crowley's choices in tone and pacing carefully balance the weight of their love story with the looming tragedy of mortality, never letting one aspect overwhelm the other. His direction ensures that every scene feels purposeful, whether it is an energetic early encounter or a quiet, heartbreaking moment later in the film. One of Crowley's signatures is his ability to craft intimacy through visual language. He often relies on close-ups to capture fleeting expressions that words cannot convey, such as a glance of hesitation, a suppressed smile, or the shadow of fear in the eyes. These close-ups give the audience access to the inner lives of the characters, making them feel like witnesses to deeply personal moments. He avoids over-stylization, instead leaning into a naturalistic aesthetic that reflects the everyday struggles and joys of the protagonists. By grounding the story visually, Crowley keeps the narrative believable even when it plays with time and memory. The pacing of the film also reflects careful directorial decisions. Rather than rushing through the highs and lows of the relationship, Crowley lets the story breathe, allowing space for silences, pauses, and moments of stillness that carry emotional weight. This slower rhythm mirrors real-life relationships, where meaningful moments often occur in quiet exchanges rather than grand gestures. At the same time, he knows when to accelerate, particularly during the rising action and the mid-film turning points, so that the narrative maintains momentum without feeling disjointed. The balance of restraint and urgency is one of the strongest aspects of his direction. Crowley's staging of scenes demonstrates his control over both space and emotional tone. In early sequences where Almut and Tobias are still strangers, he frames them with distance, often leaving empty space between them in the composition. As their bond deepens, that space gradually closes, and by the time their relationship faces its greatest trials, the camera rarely lets them be seen apart. This visual storytelling reflects their emotional journey without relying on overt exposition. His use of framing also highlights contrasts, such as moments when they are physically close but emotionally distant, showing the tension between love and the inevitability of loss. Another notable element is his command over transitions. We Live in Time does not always follow a strict linear structure, instead weaving memories and present-day experiences together. Crowley manages these shifts with grace, using seamless visual and auditory cues to ensure the audience never feels lost. A shot might begin in one timeline and dissolve into another through a matching movement or sound, reinforcing the theme of how love and memory are intertwined. This directorial approach deepens the emotional impact, as viewers experience the story as both immediate and reflective. The performances of Pugh and Garfield are clearly elevated by the director's guidance. Crowley allows them room to explore vulnerability while keeping their portrayals restrained enough to avoid melodrama. He directs them toward authenticity, encouraging physical choices like subtle touches, pauses in dialogue, or natural laughter that feels spontaneous rather than rehearsed. The result is chemistry that feels lived in and deeply relatable, which is essential for a film that hinges on the believability of its central relationship. Stylistically, Crowley leans toward long takes and steady camera movement, avoiding flashy editing that might distract from the emotional truth of the story. He favors atmospheric close-ups during pivotal scenes, particularly those that deal with illness and mortality, ensuring the audience remains connected to the characters' emotions rather than overwhelmed by technical flourishes. These directorial signatures keep the film consistent in tone and grounded in its emotional core. There are, however, moments where some viewers might find his restraint too cautious. Certain sequences linger longer than necessary, testing patience, while others underplay dramatic beats that could have had more impact with slightly bolder choices. Yet even these decisions reflect his commitment to a subtle style, prioritizing realism over heightened drama. The risks he takes in holding back often pay off, leaving space for the audience to interpret rather than being told what to feel. Ultimately, the direction of We Live in Time shapes it into more than just a love story. Crowley's vision creates a film that reflects the fragility of life, the resilience of love, and the bittersweet beauty of time. His stylistic signatures, from close-up intimacy to carefully staged framing, ensure that the narrative resonates emotionally while maintaining artistic integrity. Whether through confident choices that heighten the story or quiet restraint that leaves room for reflection, the director's control defines the film's emotional ride and secures its place as a work of thoughtful, resonant cinema. The cinematography of We Live in Time is one of the most defining features that shapes the audience's experience, giving the story its emotional weight and visual identity. The camera does not merely capture events but actively interprets them, framing the characters and their world in ways that underline the film's central themes of love, time, and memory. From wide compositions that show the vastness of the world around the characters to intimate close-ups that trap us in their private moments, the cinematography is essential to how the narrative unfolds. It creates a visual rhythm that mirrors the emotional beats of the story, guiding us through joy, tenderness, and inevitable loss. One of the standout choices in the cinematography is the use of framing to reflect the shifting dynamics between Almut, played by Florence Pugh, and Tobias, played by Garfield. In their early encounters, the camera often leaves space between them, suggesting hesitation and the cautious beginnings of a relationship. As they grow closer, the framing tightens, placing them in the same visual field more often, sometimes even overlapping their faces or hands in close shots to show unity. Later, when illness and mortality begin to intrude, the camera occasionally separates them again, even when they are together physically, symbolizing the forces pulling them apart. This interplay of space within the frame becomes a quiet but powerful storytelling tool. The movement of the camera is equally deliberate. Long, fluid tracking shots are used to create a sense of flow and continuity, echoing the idea that time is both unbroken and fleeting. These shots often follow the characters through domestic spaces or along city streets, grounding the story in everyday reality while hinting at the constant passage of moments. In contrast, still shots are employed during more emotionally charged scenes, forcing the audience to sit with the characters' feelings without distraction. The contrast between motion and stillness reflects the rhythm of life itself, with its stretches of calm interrupted by moments of sudden significance. Color palettes in the film are carefully designed to evoke mood and thematic resonance. Early sequences often use warm tones, soft yellows, gentle oranges, and natural light that convey optimism and the warmth of new love. As the story progresses, cooler hues begin to emerge, with blues and grays dominating scenes that deal with illness, distance, or reflection on mortality. The shift in palette is subtle but noticeable, pulling the audience into the characters' internal states. This careful control of color allows the cinematography to act as an emotional barometer, signaling shifts in tone even before dialogue reveals them. Lighting choices also play a crucial role in shaping mood and revealing character states. Natural lighting is often favored in moments of intimacy, creating an authentic and lived-in feel. Sunlight filtering through windows during quiet conversations or soft evening light illuminating domestic spaces emphasizes the ordinary beauty of shared time. In contrast, harsher lighting is used sparingly, often during moments of conflict or medical examination, where clarity and exposure underscore the harsh realities the characters face. The play between light and shadow is particularly striking in scenes of reflection, where characters sit partially obscured, visually embodying their struggle between hope and despair. Certain standout shots linger in memory long after the film ends. One such moment is a wide shot of Almut and Tobias in a park, dwarfed by the vast open sky above them, emphasizing the smallness of human life against the backdrop of time and nature. Another unforgettable image comes in a hospital room, where a single shaft of light falls across Almut's face as Tobias watches her, the framing capturing both intimacy and inevitability. These compositions are not decorative but essential, embedding the film's themes into the very fabric of its imagery. The cinematography also excels at balancing scale. Wide framing is used to situate the characters within larger environments, reminding us of the external world's indifference to personal struggles. Tight framing, on the other hand, draws us into the immediacy of their emotions, closing the distance between viewer and character. The alternation between wide and tight framing mirrors the oscillation of the story between the universality of love and loss and the particularity of this one couple's journey. What makes the cinematography particularly effective is its restraint. Rather than overwhelming the audience with flashy visuals, it chooses clarity, precision, and subtle artistry. Every shot feels considered, yet none feel self-indulgent. This balance ensures that the visual storytelling always serves the narrative rather than drawing attention away from it. By rooting its style in realism while maintaining poetic undertones, the cinematography allows viewers to feel both grounded and transported. In the end, the cinematography of We Live in Time is not just a backdrop but a narrative force. Through framing, movement, color, and light, it reinforces the emotional core of the story, deepening the audience's understanding of love, fragility, and the passage of time. It creates a visual language that stays with viewers beyond the credits, ensuring that key images and moods echo in memory just as strongly as the plot itself. This makes the cinematography not merely decorative but essential, shaping the film into a visually resonant meditation on human connection and impermanence. The editing and pacing of We Live in Time play a central role in shaping how the audience experiences the story, particularly since the film is not told in a strictly linear fashion. The editor, working closely with director John Crowley, builds a rhythm that mirrors both the unpredictability of life and the emotional roller coaster of a relationship marked by joy, intimacy, and looming tragedy. Editing becomes more than a technical craft here. It is a storytelling tool that controls how time is perceived, how information is revealed, and how tension is sustained from beginning to end. From the very first act, the film sets a tone of natural flow through smooth transitions. Rather than relying on abrupt cuts, many early edits are designed to glide seamlessly from one moment to the next, often using visual or auditory cues as bridges. A character's laugh might fade into the sound of a door closing in the next scene, or a gesture in one location might match the start of a movement in another. These techniques create a sense of continuity even as the film jumps through different periods of Almut and Tobias's relationship. This style works well for a story so deeply concerned with the passage of time, giving the impression that moments are connected even when years lie between them. Montages are used sparingly but effectively, particularly when the film wants to condense stretches of life into short bursts of experience. For example, sequences that show domestic happiness, cooking together, small trips, laughter and shared spaces, are strung together with rhythmic precision. These montages propel the narrative forward without sacrificing emotional depth, allowing the viewer to feel the richness of the relationship without dwelling on every individual detail. By contrast, moments of conflict or illness are edited more slowly, with fewer cuts, forcing the audience to sit with the heaviness of what the characters are enduring. This balance between brisk montage and deliberate stillness is a clear reflection of the editor's control over tone. Pacing across the acts is carefully managed, though deliberately uneven at times to reflect the ebb and flow of life. The first act moves with a lighter rhythm, echoing the freshness of new love. Conversations are cut with a sense of natural back and forth, and scenes rarely overstay their welcome. As the story transitions into the middle section, the editing allows for longer takes and slower cuts, mirroring the weight of the challenges Almut and Tobias face. This shift in pace is noticeable but not jarring, helping to deepen the emotional resonance while maintaining narrative momentum. By the final act, when the inevitability of loss becomes clear, the pacing slows even further, sometimes to the point of lingering on silence or still images. These choices might test the patience of viewers who prefer tighter rhythms, but for those attuned to the film's themes, they heighten the poignancy of the conclusion. Flashbacks and cross-cutting are also integral to how the film reveals information. Instead of laying out the story in chronological order, the editing jumps between different time periods, weaving together past and present in a way that mimics memory. This non-linear structure could easily become confusing, but the editor ensures clarity through visual consistency and emotional cues. For example, a glance between characters in the present may trigger a flashback to an earlier stage of their relationship, and the transition feels organic rather than forced. Cross-cutting is employed sparingly but effectively in moments of heightened tension, such as juxtaposing a joyful memory with a present-day hospital scene, amplifying the sense of fragility underlying even the happiest moments. One of the strengths of the editing is its trust in silence and restraint. In several key scenes, rather than cutting rapidly or filling the space with music, the film holds on a single shot, letting silence speak louder than dialogue. These editorial decisions give the actors' performances room to breathe and allow the audience to process emotion at their own pace. A simple shot of Almut sitting quietly, with only ambient sound, carries more weight than multiple rapid cuts could achieve. This restraint shows confidence in the material and reflects the film's commitment to authenticity. That said, there are moments where the rhythm could be questioned. Certain scenes in the middle act, particularly those dealing with the logistics of illness and treatment, linger longer than necessary and slightly disrupt the forward drive. While the intent is clearly to emphasize the gravity of these moments, a tighter edit might have maintained narrative focus without diluting emotional impact. Similarly, some viewers may find the slow pace of the final act challenging, though others will see it as a deliberate artistic choice to mirror the slowing of time in life's final chapters. Editing also amplifies emotion in key turning points. When Almut first shares her fears about the future, the scene is cut in a way that isolates her, giving her more solo shots before cutting back to Tobias, emphasizing her vulnerability. Later, in a powerful moment of intimacy, the editor holds the camera on both characters in a two-shot without cutting, forcing the audience to witness their unity in real time. These are the kinds of editorial decisions that turn written beats into unforgettable cinematic experiences. In conclusion, the editing and pacing of We Live in Time are carefully calibrated to match the themes of the film. Through smooth transitions, effective use of montage, controlled pacing across acts, and a willingness to trust silence, the editing elevates the narrative beyond a simple love story. It mirrors the rhythms of life, sometimes quick, sometimes painfully slow, and in doing so, makes the audience feel the full weight of time as it passes. While there are places where a different rhythm might have sharpened clarity or kept the momentum tighter, the overall editorial vision is one of restraint, emotional precision, and thematic consistency, ensuring that the film lingers in the mind long after it ends. The soundtrack and score of We Live in Time function as more than just background accompaniment. They act as an emotional guide, shaping how viewers process the highs and lows of the story. Music becomes a character in its own right, attaching itself to moments of intimacy, pain, and memory. Without the score's recurring motifs and carefully chosen silences, many of the film's most moving scenes would lose their resonance. The creative team understands the power of sound in film and uses it with both subtlety and precision, ensuring that each cue supports rather than distracts from the performances. At the heart of the score lies a haunting motif that recurs throughout the narrative, most often tied to the evolving relationship between Almut, played by Florence Pugh, and Tobias, played by Andrew Garfield. This motif begins as a delicate piano phrase, almost tentative in its early appearances, mirroring the uncertain beginnings of their romance. As the relationship deepens, the motif grows richer, layered with strings that add warmth and gravity. Later in the film, as illness intrudes on their lives, the motif returns in stripped-down variations, with single notes echoing in silence, a reminder of fragility and the passage of time. The evolution of this musical thread reflects the emotional journey of the characters, becoming a kind of sonic memory that ties the entire narrative together. Licensed music also plays an important role in grounding the story in recognizable reality. A carefully chosen track might underscore a moment of youthful joy or a shared dance, instantly transporting the audience into the emotional space of the characters. These bursts of familiar music provide contrast to the more restrained score, injecting energy and relatability. For example, a playful montage of domestic life is elevated by the use of a light-hearted song, giving the scene an immediacy that dialogue alone could not convey. These moments also highlight the difference between external, everyday life and the more inward-looking score that defines the couple's private world. Equally important is the score's willingness to step back and allow silence to carry weight. Some of the most powerful scenes in We Live in Time feature little or no music at all, relying instead on ambient sound, breathing, or pauses in conversation. This silence is not an absence but a deliberate choice, drawing attention to the raw vulnerability of the characters. For instance, when Almut receives devastating news, the absence of music allows the audience to experience the gravity of the moment without manipulation. Silence becomes a tool for authenticity, reminding viewers that life's hardest moments are often met with quiet rather than orchestration. The score also manipulates tension at key points, subtly raising the emotional temperature without overshadowing the performances. Low, sustained strings or muted piano chords often appear in the background during moments of uncertainty, signaling unease without being intrusive. These cues guide the audience's subconscious reaction, heightening suspense or dread while maintaining the film's overall restrained tone. In one particularly memorable scene, the music swells almost imperceptibly as Tobias waits for news about Almut's health, the gradual rise in sound mirroring his inner turmoil. By the time the scene resolves, the viewer has been carried on an emotional wave shaped largely by the score's careful modulation. There are also moments where the music lifts a scene from good to unforgettable. A late sequence in which Almut and Tobias share a quiet conversation about their future is underscored by a gentle but soaring string arrangement. Without this musical choice, the scene would play as a simple exchange of dialogue. With it, the moment becomes transcendent, expressing the unspoken depth of their bond. Another example occurs in a montage of memories, where the recurring motif returns in full orchestration, weaving past and present together and leaving the audience with a sense of continuity that words could not achieve. These are the points where the soundtrack proves indispensable, amplifying the emotional truth of the story. That said, the score is not flawless. There are instances where it comes close to overplaying its hand, particularly in the middle act. A few cues lean too heavily into sentimentality, threatening to dictate the audience's feelings rather than supporting them. These moments are brief, but they stand out in a film otherwise defined by restraint. A lighter touch in these instances would have preserved the balance between emotion and authenticity that the rest of the score achieves so effectively. Overall, the soundtrack and score of We Live in Time are essential to its impact. Through recurring motifs, carefully chosen licensed songs, and the brave use of silence, the film creates an auditory landscape that mirrors its themes of love, time, and loss. The music attaches itself to characters and moments, becoming a memory in itself, just as vital as the visual storytelling. Even when it risks leaning too heavily on emotion, the score succeeds more often than not, lifting scenes into moments of lasting resonance. In the end, the music ensures that the story does not just play out on screen but lingers in the mind and heart of the viewer, echoing long after the final credits. The themes and messages of We Live in Time go far beyond the framework of a romantic drama, turning it into a meditation on what it means to live, love, and confront the inevitable passage of time. While the plot focuses on Almut, played by Florence Pugh, and Tobias, played by Andrew Garfield, and the arc of their relationship, the film's deeper purpose lies in exploring universal questions. How do we measure the value of our lives? How do we endure loss? And how does love both soften and intensify the reality of mortality? These questions form the backbone of the narrative, woven through image, sound, and silence as much as dialogue. At its core, the most prominent theme is love. Not simply romantic love, but love in all its contradictions, joyful, painful, life-giving, and devastating. The film portrays love as the anchor that gives meaning to existence, even as it exposes characters to the greatest suffering. Through the story of Almut and Tobias, the film suggests that love is not measured by the length of time spent together but by the depth of connection forged within that time. This message resonates in both quiet domestic moments and heart-wrenching scenes of illness, reinforcing the idea that love is an act of presence, of choosing to share life no matter how brief it may be. Alongside love sits the theme of time itself, perhaps the most important idea the film wrestles with. Time in We Live in Time is both linear and non-linear, flowing naturally but also fractured by memory and flashback. The film communicates that time is not something we control but something we experience, and the editing emphasizes how moments of joy or despair are often remembered out of sequence. Through this structure, the movie reminds viewers that time's meaning lies not in its quantity but in how it is lived. A brief embrace, a conversation at the right moment, or a memory preserved becomes as significant as years. In this way, time is both a gift and a limit, shaping the very definition of human existence. Mortality and fragility of life are also central. From early hints of illness to the heartbreaking developments that follow, the narrative never shies away from the reality that life is temporary. Yet the film does not present death as an end devoid of meaning. Instead, it portrays mortality as the very thing that gives love urgency and importance. By showing Almut and Tobias navigating both joy and suffering, the film suggests that mortality should not diminish the value of life but rather heighten our awareness of its preciousness. This theme is not delivered through heavy-handed dialogue but through images, a lingering shot of two hands held tightly, a quiet pause between conversations, or a sudden silence that says more than words could. Another recurring theme is resilience. While the characters face unimaginable challenges, their ability to continue loving, laughing, and holding on to each other speaks to the human spirit's capacity for endurance. Resilience is depicted not as grand heroism but as small, everyday acts, the willingness to cook a meal together, to share a joke, to show up at a hospital bedside. These ordinary choices take on extraordinary weight in the face of time and loss, and the film communicates resilience as one of the purest expressions of love. The film also wrestles with identity, particularly through the lens of shared and individual selves. Almut and Tobias are not only a couple but individuals with histories, fears, and dreams. The tension between personal identity and shared identity runs throughout the story. At times, their love strengthens their sense of self. At other times, it requires sacrifice and compromise. This tension raises questions about what it means to belong to another person while still remaining whole. The film does not provide simple answers but uses subtle gestures and moments of conflict to explore how identity evolves in relationships. Visually, the movie communicates its themes with clarity. For example, the recurring use of light and shadow emphasizes the duality of hope and despair. Warm golden tones in domestic settings represent the vitality of love, while cooler, dimmer lighting in hospital rooms underscores the encroachment of mortality. These visual choices echo the thematic contrasts between life and death, presence and absence, joy and sorrow. In another instance, the use of recurring locations, such as a kitchen or a shared bedroom, underscores how love transforms ordinary spaces into places of profound meaning. At times, the film also leaves thematic interpretation open-ended, offering mixed signals that invite reflection. For example, while the story celebrates the depth of love, it also shows the pain of becoming dependent on another person, raising the question of whether such vulnerability is a gift or a burden. Similarly, the non-linear handling of time can feel disorienting, reflecting the way memory works but also leaving audiences to question whether clarity or confusion better serves the truth of lived experience. These ambiguities do not weaken the film's message. Instead, they encourage viewers to bring their own interpretations to the story. In the end, We Live in Time delivers a series of interconnected messages. That love defines us more than achievements or possessions, that time is precious and finite, and that mortality, while painful, is also what makes life meaningful. Through its characters, images, and silences, the film suggests that to live fully is to embrace both joy and sorrow, presence and absence, beginning and end. For a USA audience, these themes resonate universally, cutting across culture and geography because they speak to the most human of experiences, the search for meaning in the face of time. The film's message is not just to live but to live in time, with awareness, love, and gratitude for every fleeting moment. When looking at the visual effects and CGI in We Live in Time, the first thing to recognize is how sparingly and purposefully they are used. This is not a film that leans heavily on spectacle or artificial environments, but rather one that relies on subtle digital enhancements to expand its realism and allow the emotional journey to resonate without distraction. The effects here do not call attention to themselves, which is often the sign of quality work. Instead of overwhelming audiences with overt CGI, the production uses technology in small but significant ways, polishing details and enhancing scenes so the focus remains on characters and story. In that sense, the film uses visual effects as invisible tools that work in the background to support the director's vision. One of the most impressive aspects of the visual design is how natural the digital work feels. For example, moments that involve changes in environment, such as shifting seasons, transitions across years, or the quiet depiction of illness and recovery, are assisted by seamless effects. Snowfall, sunlight breaking through windows, or subtle shifts in a character's physical appearance are supported with digital touches that ensure continuity and emotional weight without feeling artificial. In these moments, CGI does not shout for attention but instead gently smooths over the storytelling process, allowing time and memory to flow without jarring breaks. There are a few standout sequences that showcase more noticeable visual effects. A car accident sequence, for instance, demonstrates how practical stunt work and digital compositing blend together. The impact, debris, and slow-motion effect of the crash are heightened with CGI, but done in such a way that viewers feel the shock without ever seeing the seams of digital trickery. This is where the film's effects team earns respect, because the sequence is not about spectacle but about shifting the trajectory of the narrative. It is a turning point, and the visual work supports the emotional punch rather than turning into an action set piece. The film also plays with time visually, and here the use of VFX is crucial. Transitions that move characters from one stage of their lives to another are designed with a fluidity that could not be achieved with only practical tools. Whether through aging effects, changes in scenery, or subtle morphing that ties one emotional beat to the next, these digital techniques are quietly dazzling. They do not feel like flashy sci-fi effects but more like an artistic brushstroke. It is these transitions that create a sense of continuity, reminding the audience that time is both relentless and delicate, moving forward without pause even as characters try to hold on to fleeting moments. Practical effects also play a role, and it is worth noting how well they mesh with digital support. Physical sets, makeup, and lighting are grounded in realism, giving the actors something tangible to work with. Digital effects enhance rather than replace this foundation. For example, a hospital setting relies heavily on authentic design, while CGI provides small atmospheric touches. Monitors, reflections, or depth in the background that would be difficult to capture in camera. The balance between practical and digital is what makes the film's visual world believable, never tipping too far into artifice. That said, there are a few moments where CGI can feel slightly noticeable, particularly in scenes where background extensions or environmental manipulations are heavier. While not distracting enough to derail the film, these moments remind viewers that they are watching something digitally created. Still, they are brief and mostly forgivable in the context of a film that otherwise uses restraint. The key strength of We Live in Time's visual effects lies in their thematic alignment. The digital work is not used for spectacle but to enhance the movie's central concerns: love, memory, and the passage of time. Whether it is aging makeup smoothed with CGI, a background altered to evoke nostalgia, or transitions that visualize memory itself, the effects exist in service of the story. They make abstract ideas tangible, translating emotional experiences into visual form. For USA audiences accustomed to big-budget blockbusters that often showcase CGI for scale and impact, the understated nature of effects here may come as a refreshing change. The film demonstrates that digital artistry does not always need to be loud to be powerful. It can whisper, it can refine, and it can bring humanity into sharper focus. Instead of pulling viewers out of the moment, the effects consistently push them deeper into it, creating a cinematic experience where the invisible becomes essential. This is a case where CGI is not just technology, but a quiet partner in storytelling. The set design and locations in We Live in Time are essential to how the story unfolds, providing not just a backdrop but an emotional texture that shapes how audiences perceive the characters and their journey. The production design builds a world that feels both intimate and expansive, carefully balancing real-life authenticity with the cinematic polish required to hold attention. Every location, from the smallest interior to the largest exterior, has been chosen or constructed with intention, allowing the environment to reflect not only the passage of time but also the internal states of the characters. The film makes strong use of apartments and domestic spaces, which become central to understanding the lives of the protagonists. Cramped kitchens, modest living rooms, and bedrooms that feel lived in speak volumes about their circumstances and personalities. The choice of props, like a coffee mug left on a cluttered table or books stacked casually against a wall, builds the sense of an authentic environment where daily life unfolds. These small touches communicate intimacy, showing audiences that these characters are grounded in reality rather than an idealized cinematic world. The domestic spaces also shift as the characters' lives evolve, reflecting both material changes and emotional growth. Hospital settings also play an important role in the story, and the design here leans into authenticity without becoming cold or overly sterile. The production team balances realism with emotional resonance. Machines, beds, and hallways are accurately detailed, but the use of lighting, color, and background props prevents these spaces from feeling impersonal. Instead, they reflect the vulnerability and fragility of human life, amplifying the film's themes of time, loss, and connection. For USA audiences used to hospital sets in film and television that often feel clinical or exaggerated, the restraint here adds credibility and emotional depth. The contrast between interiors and exteriors is another strength of the film's design. Outdoor locations provide breathing room, visually widening the scope of the story and offering relief from the intensity of interior drama. Parks, city streets, and countryside landscapes are not just pretty backdrops but active participants in the storytelling. A walk through a quiet park, for example, becomes a moment of reflection, while a busy street might heighten the sense of chaos or disconnection. The natural world is particularly important, with landscapes tied to themes of memory and continuity. Sweeping shots of fields or skies create a sense of scale, reminding audiences of time's vastness in contrast to the fleeting moments of individual lives. The use of real locations versus studio builds is handled with intelligence. Real locations lend authenticity, grounding the story in recognizable spaces that feel accessible to audiences. At the same time, studio sets allow for greater control of detail, lighting, and atmosphere when precision is needed to support the narrative. For instance, intimate character-driven scenes often take place in controlled environments, ensuring that every detail of set dressing works to support emotional beats. Meanwhile, real-world exteriors bring spontaneity and organic detail that studio work cannot replicate. One of the most striking aspects of the set design is its use of implied history. Rooms and props never feel newly decorated or artificially placed. Instead, they carry a lived-in quality, as if these characters have been inhabiting these spaces long before the audience arrived. Scratches on furniture, photographs on walls, and worn fabrics all tell silent stories. These details add depth, allowing the audience to infer aspects of the characters' pasts without requiring explicit exposition. Such design choices create a subtle but powerful realism, reinforcing the film's emotional weight. Symbolic use of locations also contributes to the storytelling. A particular apartment may serve as a recurring anchor point in the narrative, embodying the evolution of a relationship or the persistence of memory. Similarly, outdoor spaces may shift meaning depending on when they are visited in the film's timeline. A sunlit park that represents hope in one scene might later feel heavy with loss when revisited under different circumstances. This layering of meaning through repeated locations ties the physical world to the emotional journey, giving the film a thematic richness that resonates long after the credits roll. The success of the set design and locations in We Live in Time lies in how they support the actors' performances. Authentic spaces allow performers to fully inhabit their roles, reacting naturally to the environments around them. A cramped apartment may heighten tension in a heated exchange, while a wide-open field gives room for vulnerability or reflection. The design works hand in hand with the story, ensuring that no set or location feels accidental or ornamental. For USA audiences, the authenticity of these environments resonates because they strike a balance between the familiar and the cinematic. The film's production design avoids glossy artificiality and instead opts for grounded realism, layered with meaningful detail. This makes the story more accessible, as viewers see reflections of their own lives in the spaces on screen. Ultimately, the sets and locations do more than frame the action. They become extensions of the characters themselves, shaping mood, symbolizing inner states, and adding depth to every moment of the narrative. The dialogue and script of We Live in Time serve as the backbone of the film, shaping not only the story but also the emotional resonance that carries through each scene. When examining the voice of the script, one of the first things to notice is its restraint. The film avoids overloading viewers with exposition, instead favoring lines that feel natural and conversational. This choice gives the audience room to breathe, to absorb subtext, and to connect emotionally without being told exactly what to think. For USA audiences who value realism in dialogue, the script's approach creates a sense of intimacy, as though viewers are eavesdropping on genuine conversations rather than staged exchanges. At its strongest, the dialogue is sharp, layered, and grounded in emotional truth. Lines are written to reveal more than what is spoken, hinting at hidden fears, unspoken desires, and deep-rooted conflicts. A simple question can carry the weight of a lifetime, and an offhand remark can reveal a character's state of mind without needing overt explanation. This use of subtext is one of the film's greatest strengths. Rather than hammering themes into place, the script trusts audiences to pick up on nuances, whether it is a pause that lingers too long or a deflection in response to an uncomfortable truth. The conversations often double as plot engines, moving the story forward while simultaneously developing relationships. For example, exchanges between Almut, played by Florence Pugh, and Tobias, played by Andrew Garfield, do not simply serve as casual dialogue. They are crafted to slowly peel back layers of who these characters are, what they fear, and what they hope to achieve. Their early conversations carry a playful, tentative energy, suggesting attraction and curiosity. As the story progresses, their words deepen, revealing vulnerabilities and unspoken worries about time, love, and mortality. These evolving dialogues are essential to understanding the arc of their relationship, making the progression feel authentic and earned. The script also makes bold use of silence, recognizing that sometimes what is not said can be more powerful than spoken words. In several key moments, pauses and unspoken tension carry as much dramatic weight as dialogue. This is especially effective in emotional turning points, where silence allows viewers to sit with the gravity of a situation rather than rushing to fill the space. For USA audiences, who are familiar with dialogue-heavy dramas, these moments of restraint feel refreshing, allowing emotion to resonate more deeply without verbal explanation. That said, not every line in the script achieves this level of impact. There are moments where dialogue slips into predictability, echoing phrases or sentiments that feel too familiar. At times, the script leans on dialogue to clarify points that are already clear through performance and visuals. These instances risk breaking immersion, as audiences may feel they are being told something rather than discovering it organically. A tighter rewrite in these places could have trimmed redundancy, sharpening the script's overall impact. Still, even the weaker passages are carried by the strength of the performances, which breathe life into lines that might otherwise have felt flat. Florence Pugh, in particular, has a gift for elevating dialogue with subtle delivery, adding layers of meaning through tone, pauses, and physicality. Andrew Garfield, too, turns ordinary lines into emotionally charged beats through timing and inflection. Together, their chemistry allows the dialogue to sparkle even when the words themselves are less than remarkable. Thematically, the script weaves its ideas into dialogue without becoming preachy. Conversations about time, love, and the fragility of life are handled with care, often framed in personal and relatable terms rather than lofty philosophical statements. This allows the film's deeper messages to emerge naturally, grounded in character rather than imposed from outside. When a line resonates, it feels earned because it arises from genuine character experience, not because the script is trying to lecture the audience. A standout feature of the dialogue is its ability to balance intimacy with universality. Many exchanges feel deeply personal to the characters, yet the emotions they convey are universally relatable. A casual conversation about daily routines might evolve into a meditation on mortality, or a playful back and forth can suddenly reveal fear of loss. This layering gives the dialogue staying power, with lines lingering in the memory long after the film ends. Ultimately, the script of We Live in Time succeeds because it knows when to speak and when to remain quiet. It leans on naturalistic exchanges to build authenticity, uses subtext to reveal character depth, and employs silence to amplify emotion. While there are occasional moments of clumsy or overly direct writing, the overall effect is one of intimacy and truth. For USA audiences, the script's voice will likely feel both familiar and refreshing, offering dialogue that mirrors real human interaction while also carrying the weight of cinematic storytelling. The balance of subtlety and emotional honesty makes the dialogue one of the film's most effective tools, shaping a narrative that lingers long after the screen goes dark. We Live in Time firmly establishes itself as a drama, though it layers in elements of romance and quiet tragedy that give it a unique texture. The film is not designed to shock like horror or thrill like an action spectacle, but rather to immerse viewers in an emotionally resonant journey about love, time, and the fragility of human connection. When looking at its execution within the genre, it is clear that the film both honors traditional expectations of drama and pushes beyond them by experimenting with structure and tone. For USA audiences, who are familiar with both conventional Hollywood dramas and more independent, art-house approaches, the film manages to strike a balance that feels fresh while still emotionally accessible. One of the hallmarks of drama as a genre is its ability to explore the emotional depth of characters rather than relying heavily on external spectacle. We Live in Time excels in this regard. The film invests its energy into character interactions, subtle dialogue, and understated conflict rather than grand gestures or explosive plot twists. The classic beats of dramatic storytelling, love found, obstacles faced, loss endured, are all present, but they are handled with restraint and nuance. This makes the film resonate on a personal level, as the struggles of Almut and Tobias are relatable not because they are extraordinary, but because they are deeply human. The romance element is central to the execution of the drama. Unlike many romantic films that rely on sweeping declarations or exaggerated conflicts, We Live in Time builds intimacy through quiet moments and authentic exchanges. The chemistry between Florence Pugh and Andrew Garfield allows the film to capture the small details that define a relationship, from playful banter to shared silences that say more than words. In terms of genre expectations, this is a refreshing deviation from formulaic romance plots where misunderstandings or contrived conflicts often drive the narrative. Here, the story focuses more on how love sustains and evolves in the face of inevitable hardships, which feels honest and mature. At the same time, the film embraces elements of tragedy that deepen its dramatic weight. By exploring illness, time, and mortality, it leans into territory familiar to fans of heartfelt dramas such as The Fault in Our Stars or Atonement. Yet, unlike some films that risk becoming overly sentimental, We Live in Time maintains a careful balance, allowing emotion to emerge naturally rather than manipulating the audience with exaggerated melodrama. This choice aligns with the expectations of USA audiences who often look for sincerity and authenticity in modern dramas, preferring to feel rather than to be overtly pushed toward tears. In terms of structure, the film experiments with non-linear storytelling, weaving past and present together in a way that mirrors the fluidity of memory. This narrative choice challenges traditional drama structures, where events unfold in a straightforward, chronological order. Instead, We Live in Time uses time as a thematic device, asking viewers to piece together the story in fragments. This approach may delight audiences who appreciate layered, thought-provoking storytelling, though it may also risk alienating those who prefer a more linear and conventional narrative. Still, for USA audiences increasingly accustomed to complex narratives in both film and television, This technique feels more like an evolution of the genre than a distraction. Another important aspect of genre execution is the avoidance of clichés. While the film does engage with familiar dramatic tropes such as illness, loss, and the endurance of love, it sidesteps many of the more tired conventions. There are no overdone deathbed monologues or contrived reconciliations. Instead, the focus remains on small, human details that make the story feel grounded. For example, rather than framing love as a grandiose concept, it portrays it through gestures, routines, and the passage of shared time. This emphasis on realism elevates the genre execution, allowing the film to stand out in a crowded field of dramas that often fall into predictability. The risk in such an approach lies in pacing and audience expectation. Some viewers may come into a drama hoping for heightened conflict or cathartic release, and We Live in Time often chooses subtlety over spectacle. For those used to faster, more conventional beats, this could feel slow or understated. However, for audiences who value character-driven narratives, the film's approach is more rewarding, offering layers of meaning that unfold gradually rather than being handed over immediately. Ultimately, We Live in Time executes its genre with remarkable skill, honoring the expectations of drama while pushing the boundaries of how a love story can be told. It nails the classic beats of emotional connection, personal struggle, and ultimate reflection, while avoiding clichés that would make the story feel manufactured. For USA audiences, it delivers the honesty and depth they often look for in dramas, while also offering a structural freshness that keeps the experience engaging. In its blend of romance, tragedy, and character-driven storytelling, the film not only honors its genre but also reinvents it in ways that are memorable, heartfelt, and deeply resonant. We Live in Time may present itself primarily as a deeply personal love story, but beneath its character-driven surface, it carries meaningful social and cultural commentary that resonates with today's audiences. The film is not overtly political, but its themes of time, illness, mortality, and human connection intersect with broader questions about modern life, healthcare, gender roles, and how people navigate love in an increasingly uncertain world. For USA audiences, who often expect cinema to both entertain and reflect real issues, the subtext of the film provides additional depth and makes it more than just an intimate drama. One of the most striking areas of social commentary in We Live in Time is its exploration of illness and the fragility of health. Through Almut's storyline, the film confronts the emotional and practical realities of facing medical challenges. This naturally brings up cultural conversations about healthcare systems, the emotional toll of illness, and how families cope with uncertainty. For American viewers, who live in a country where healthcare access and affordability are pressing issues, these elements carry particular weight. The film does not preach about policy, but by showing the strain illness places on relationships and daily life, it raises awareness of the universal human experience of vulnerability. This sensitivity helps ground the story, reminding audiences of how illness reshapes priorities and exposes systemic challenges without turning the film into a message-driven project. The film also makes subtle commentary on gender roles within relationships. Almut, portrayed by Florence Pugh, is depicted as a strong, independent woman whose vulnerability emerges through her health struggles. Tobias, played by Garfield, must confront his own emotional limitations as he shifts from partner to caretaker. This dynamic reflects evolving cultural conversations about partnership, masculinity, and emotional labor. In many cultures, men are expected to be stoic or detached when dealing with hardship, but the film pushes against this stereotype by showing Tobias as someone learning to embrace vulnerability and compassion. For USA audiences, where discussions about gender expectations and emotional openness have become increasingly mainstream, this portrayal feels timely and progressive. Beyond personal relationships, We Live in Time also touches on cultural questions about time itself and how societies value it. In a world driven by productivity, speed, and achievement, the film insists on slowing down, focusing on small, everyday moments that define intimacy and meaning. This can be interpreted as a critique of modern culture's obsession with rushing through life rather than savoring it. In American society, where work-life balance is a constant struggle and people often measure worth through output, the film's insistence on cherishing time feels like a quiet but powerful social statement. It reminds audiences that life's value lies not in milestones but in the fleeting, shared experiences that often go unnoticed. The romantic relationship at the heart of the film also offers commentary on generational perspectives of love. Unlike many modern depictions that lean into fleeting attraction or overly dramatized passion, We Live in Time portrays love as enduring, layered, and complicated. This resonates with cultural shifts toward valuing authenticity in storytelling and rejecting overly commercialized depictions of romance. For USA viewers, who are accustomed to both Hollywood romantic tropes and more grounded indie portrayals, the film strikes a balance that critiques artificiality while affirming the depth of real human bonds. Another layer of commentary lies in the film's handling of memory and legacy. By weaving non-linear storytelling into its structure, the film highlights how people construct their personal histories and how memories shape identity. This connects to larger cultural questions about how individuals and societies remember, what they choose to forget, and how narratives are passed down. In a country like the USA, where cultural debates about history, memory, and identity are ongoing, this subtle reflection on remembrance carries broader resonance, even though it is framed through an intimate lens. The film does not shy away from moments that could spark debate. For example, its focus on illness and mortality could feel heavy-handed to some, and certain viewers may find the lack of broader social context a limitation. While the story focuses tightly on its characters, some may wish it addressed systemic issues more directly, such as healthcare inequalities or cultural stigmas around illness. In that sense, the film risks oversimplifying complex realities by framing them purely through a personal love story rather than acknowledging the structural forces at play. However, others may argue that its restraint is precisely what makes the commentary resonate. It allows viewers to bring their own social and cultural contexts into the interpretation rather than dictating a message. In terms of timeliness, We Live in Time feels especially relevant in a post-pandemic world. Audiences globally, and particularly in the USA, have become more conscious of the fragility of life, the importance of relationships, and the weight of time. The film's emphasis on cherishing love and confronting mortality directly taps into cultural conversations that have gained prominence in recent years. This gives the film a contemporary edge, allowing it to feel like a reflection of collective experiences rather than just a private story. Ultimately, the social and cultural commentary in We Live in Time enriches the film without overshadowing its emotional core. It sensitively handles topics like illness, gender roles, time, and memory, opening the door for productive questions rather than forcing simplistic answers. For USA audiences, the film offers both a moving love story and a mirror to cultural concerns about how we live, love, and spend the finite time we are given. Its commentary is quiet but powerful, ensuring that the film resonates not just as entertainment but as a meditation on the world we inhabit today. Audience engagement is often the measure of how successful a film is beyond its technical craft, and in the case of We Live in Time, this element plays a significant role in shaping its overall impact. The movie thrives on its ability to connect with viewers emotionally, intellectually, and socially, creating moments that stay with audiences long after the credits roll. From scenes designed to elicit gasps to quiet moments that spark deep reflection, the film demonstrates a keen awareness of how to hold attention and inspire conversation. This engagement is not accidental but rather the result of carefully structured storytelling and character-driven drama. One of the most immediate hooks comes from the emotional weight of the performances. The film leans heavily on intimacy, using small gestures, glances, and pauses to communicate what words cannot. Viewers are likely to feel drawn into the central relationship, experiencing the highs and lows as though they are part of the journey. These moments create opportunities for tears, especially when the story pivots to themes of loss or fragile hope. Instead of manipulating emotions with exaggerated melodrama, the film trusts its audience to recognize the depth in quieter beats. That restraint allows viewers to connect more personally, often seeing pieces of their own lives reflected in the characters' struggles. We Live in Time also crafts several signature moments that are likely to generate strong audience reactions. Scenes of confrontation, where hidden truths are finally revealed, deliver tension that builds toward catharsis. These sequences often produce gasps or even audible reactions in a theater setting, particularly when the revelations alter everything the characters thought they knew. At the same time, smaller comedic beats sprinkled throughout balance the heaviness, giving viewers moments of relief that make the emotional lows feel even more impactful by contrast. The shifts in tone are carefully measured, ensuring that laughter feels earned and not intrusive. Rewatchability is another dimension of engagement that the film seems to embrace. While the core story is accessible on a first viewing, subtle details in dialogue, background props, and visual motifs provide additional meaning on repeat watches. Observant viewers may notice recurring symbols that deepen the themes of time, memory, or human connection. These layered elements not only encourage multiple viewings but also spark fan discussions online, where theories and interpretations can flourish. That kind of participatory engagement extends the life of the film beyond its initial release, allowing it to remain in cultural conversation. Another key area of audience involvement lies in how the film encourages debate. The narrative does not provide easy answers to all of its central questions, leaving certain themes open to interpretation. For some viewers, this ambiguity can be frustrating, but for many, it becomes the very reason to continue thinking and talking about the story. Whether the debate centers on character motivations, the morality of certain choices, or the meaning of the final act, the film provides ample material for passionate discussion. This aspect makes it a strong candidate for film clubs, online forums, and even academic analysis. In today's media landscape, moments that can be clipped, GIFed, or quoted often help a film spread beyond traditional viewing platforms, and We Live in Time contains several such moments. A poignant line of dialogue, a visually striking shot, or a sudden plot twist has the potential to circulate widely on social media, drawing in audiences who may not have otherwise been interested. This organic sharing further amplifies engagement by allowing the film to resonate with people outside its immediate release window. What sets the film apart in terms of audience engagement is the balance between personal emotion and universal relatability. The story is specific to its characters, yet it taps into themes, love, fear, regret, and resilience, that almost anyone can understand. That universality ensures that viewers of different backgrounds can find a point of connection, making the film not just a passive experience but a shared cultural moment. When audiences see themselves in the characters' joys and struggles, they become more invested in the journey and more likely to carry the film with them after it ends. Ultimately, We Live in Time demonstrates a deliberate effort to keep its audience involved on multiple levels. It provides emotional highs and lows that resonate immediately, layered details that reward deeper attention, and thematic ambiguity that sparks ongoing discussion. By blending heartfelt performances with memorable moments and thought-provoking ideas, the film ensures that engagement does not stop when the lights come up. Instead, it lingers, inviting viewers to reflect, share, and revisit, a quality that marks it as more than just a fleeting cinematic experience. Comparisons to similar films can often reveal how a movie situates itself within its genre and how it stacks up against the creative lineage it draws from. In the case of We Live in Time, the film clearly belongs in the tradition of intimate dramas that explore the fragility of relationships, memory, and the passing of time. Its narrative structure, visual approach, and thematic focus make it a film that invites comparison not only to contemporary works but also to classics that have mined similar territory. Looking at these connections helps to highlight both the film's strengths and its shortcomings, as well as the ways it pushes against or embraces convention. One of the most immediate comparisons comes with romantic dramas such as Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind and Blue Valentine. Like those films, We Live in Time is deeply invested in exploring how love can be both transcendent and devastating, how memory shapes our understanding of relationships, and how time can erode or reinforce emotional bonds. Eternal Sunshine leaned heavily on surreal visual storytelling to explore these ideas, whereas We Live in Time opts for a more grounded, naturalistic style. In this respect, it feels closer to Blue Valentine, which also relied on raw performances and an intimate scale to portray the collapse and beauty of love. Compared to these films, We Live in Time may not be as experimental as Eternal Sunshine, nor as unflinchingly raw as Blue Valentine, but it finds its own balance by weaving poignancy with restraint, offering something both accessible and emotionally layered. Another relevant comparison is with Manchester by the Sea, a film that similarly balances grief, family ties, and the weight of personal history. Both films lean on subdued, character-driven storytelling, using silence and subtle gestures as much as dialogue. Manchester by the Sea delivered a heavy emotional punch with its exploration of grief and responsibility, often overwhelming viewers with its intensity. We Live in Time, while also emotionally resonant, chooses a slightly more hopeful tone, leaving space for redemption and connection rather than despair. For some viewers, this makes the film more approachable, though others may find it less daring in its unwillingness to plunge into darkness as fully as Manchester by the Sea. When placed next to the director's past work, We Live in Time reveals both continuity and growth. If the filmmaker's earlier projects leaned on themes of identity, longing, or fractured relationships, this film appears to synthesize those interests into a more mature and polished form. The pacing, visual language, and thematic clarity suggest a confidence that comes from refining ideas over multiple projects. Yet, this maturity can also be read as safety. Viewers who admire the experimentation or rawness of earlier works may feel that We Live in Time is too restrained, too careful to fit within award-season prestige drama conventions rather than pushing boundaries further. Another lens of comparison comes through recent films like Past Lives, which also focuses on the weight of memory, missed opportunities, and how time reframes relationships. Both films share a contemplative tone, but while Past Lives drew strength from cultural identity and the idea of parallel lives, We Live in Time grounds itself more firmly in the universal passage of time and the intimate details of human connection. This makes it potentially more broadly relatable, though perhaps less distinct in its storytelling voice. Where Past Lives felt like a fresh new voice in the genre, We Live in Time can feel more like an evolution of familiar forms. On the weaker side, comparisons to films such as Arrival or even Interstellar show where We Live in Time lacks ambition in scope. While those films use science fiction frameworks to explore time, memory, and love, We Live in Time deliberately avoids genre trappings in favor of quiet realism. The contrast highlights the film's strength in intimacy but also its limits in terms of cinematic scale. Viewers looking for a profound exploration of time that bends narrative and genre conventions may feel underwhelmed here, since the film chooses personal realism over grand metaphysical questions. Overall, We Live in Time emerges as a film that borrows wisely from its predecessors while still carving out its own niche. It does not reinvent the genre in the way Eternal Sunshine did, nor does it devastate in the way Blue Valentine or Manchester by the Sea managed to. Instead, it positions itself as a thoughtful, restrained entry that values subtlety and emotional authenticity over stylistic bravado. Its comparisons to contemporary works like Past Lives place it firmly within an ongoing cinematic conversation about love, memory, and the human condition, and while it may not redefine that conversation, it certainly enriches it. In the broader context of similar films, We Live in Time feels like a steady, reliable contribution rather than a groundbreaking reinvention. For audiences who appreciate quiet reflection and heartfelt performances, it succeeds in honoring the tradition of emotionally driven dramas. But when viewed alongside more daring or stylistically bold works, it may be seen as cautious. That balance of strength and restraint is ultimately what defines its place within the genre, a film that does not overshadow its influences but rather stands alongside them as a worthy continuation of cinematic exploration into the complexities of time and love. Symbolism and metaphor play a subtle yet powerful role in We Live in Time, adding layers of meaning that deepen the story and enrich the audience's experience beyond the surface-level narrative. While the film may appear to function primarily as a straightforward character-driven drama about love, memory, and the passage of time, it carefully embeds recurring images, colors, and motifs that signal themes and character arcs. These choices are not always highlighted directly but instead work beneath the dialogue, rewarding attentive viewers with an appreciation of how carefully constructed the film's symbolic framework is. One of the most striking motifs throughout the film is the use of clocks and the passage of time. Clocks are never overemphasized, but they appear in the background of key scenes, whether on the wall of a kitchen, ticking softly in the corner of a hospital room, or glancing past in the framing of a transitional shot. These clocks act as reminders of inevitability, both the everyday passage of time and the finite nature of life itself. They are also tied to the characters' awareness of their shared journey, with moments of silence where the ticking clock underscores conversations about memory, loss, or the future. In these moments, the clocks become a metaphor for mortality and for the idea that love, no matter how strong, exists within the bounds of time. Colors also serve a symbolic purpose. Warm tones, particularly soft oranges and yellows, often accompany moments of intimacy or hope between the leads, signaling comfort and safety in their connection. In contrast, colder tones such as blues and grays dominate scenes of separation, uncertainty, or despair, visually externalizing the characters' emotional states. For instance, a pivotal scene in which the couple confronts the fragility of their future is drenched in muted gray light, visually mirroring the uncertainty they feel. Later, when they find renewed purpose in their bond, the frame subtly shifts back toward warmer hues, suggesting that hope and love can reassert themselves even in bleak circumstances. Another important metaphor is food and shared meals. Scenes around dining tables, kitchens, or cafes are not simply domestic filler but carry symbolic resonance about connection, nourishment, and the fragility of everyday rituals. Early in the relationship, shared meals are light-hearted and filled with playful intimacy. Later, when challenges emerge, meals become quieter, sometimes half-eaten or interrupted, symbolizing disruption in their bond. The repeated act of eating together becomes a barometer for the health of the relationship, suggesting that intimacy is often measured in the simplest, most mundane acts. The motif of windows and reflections also recurs, often framing characters as they confront internal conflict. Characters are frequently shown looking through windows, sometimes at each other, sometimes at the outside world, emphasizing both connection and distance. Reflections in glass or mirrors highlight duality, memory, and the idea that identity is both seen and hidden. A particularly poignant moment involves a reflection of one character superimposed against the outside world, blending personal longing with the unstoppable passage of time. This visual metaphor reinforces the theme that people exist both in their immediate realities and in the broader, inescapable flow of life. Memory itself is represented through recurring symbolic objects, such as photographs or small keepsakes. These objects are not heavily emphasized but appear subtly throughout the film, gaining meaning as the story progresses. A photograph glimpsed in an earlier act may resurface later, not only reminding the characters of their past but also reminding the audience of how fragile memory can be. The use of these objects suggests that memory is not just mental but also physical, carried in things we keep and revisit. The persistence of these items highlights the tension between holding on to the past and moving forward into an uncertain future. Nature imagery also plays an important symbolic role. Gardens, trees, and outdoor landscapes are repeatedly tied to themes of renewal, cycles, and impermanence. A recurring shot of leaves falling from a tree, for instance, becomes a quiet metaphor for the inevitability of loss, while blooming flowers echo moments of hope and new beginnings. By tying the character's emotional journey to natural cycles, the film reinforces the idea that love and loss are part of larger rhythms that cannot be controlled but must be lived through. Silence itself functions as a metaphor throughout the film. Instead of filling every scene with dialogue or music, the filmmakers use silence to reflect the gaps in memory, the weight of unspoken feelings, or the inevitability of certain truths. A lingering silence between two characters can communicate more than words, symbolizing both distance and intimacy depending on context. This recurring use of silence is not just stylistic but deeply thematic, reinforcing the film's meditation on what cannot be fully expressed or captured. Taken together, the symbols and metaphors in We Live in Time enrich the film's exploration of love, mortality, and the passage of time. They turn ordinary objects and visuals into carriers of meaning, asking the audience to notice the recurring motifs and piece together their emotional significance. By using clocks, colors, food, windows, photographs, and nature as symbolic anchors, the film layers its themes in ways that remain with the viewer long after the credits roll. Rather than relying solely on dialogue to express ideas, it trusts in metaphor and visual storytelling to carry emotional weight, rewarding audiences who look closely and reflect deeply. When examining the franchise or historical context of We Live in Time, it becomes clear that the film does not belong to a traditional cinematic universe or ongoing franchise in the way audiences often associate with superhero series or long-running sagas. Instead, its identity lies within the lineage of intimate romantic dramas and character-driven narratives that explore themes of time, memory, and mortality. Placing the film in this broader historical and cultural context helps audiences understand how it fits into both contemporary cinema and the longer tradition of storytelling about human connection and the passage of time. From a cinematic history perspective, We Live in Time resonates strongly with films that deal with nonlinear storytelling and the emotional weight of memory. Comparisons can be drawn to movies like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind or Blue Valentine, which also explore love through fragmented timelines and emotional highs and lows. By situating its story within this tradition, We Live in Time contributes to a genre that privileges realism and emotional truth over spectacle. In this sense, while it is not a sequel or part of a connected franchise, it functions as a spiritual successor to these earlier films, carrying forward themes of vulnerability, inevitability, and the endurance of love in the face of mortality. In terms of historical context, the film also reflects modern cinematic trends that favor character intimacy and emotional authenticity. Over the last decade, audiences have grown increasingly receptive to films that step away from spectacle-heavy formats and instead focus on personal, heartfelt narratives. We Live in Time positions itself within this movement by offering a story that prioritizes the inner lives of its characters and the subtle shifts in their relationship. This places the film not only within the history of romantic drama but also within a contemporary wave of films emphasizing authenticity, naturalism, and deeply personal stories. Though fictional, the movie's treatment of illness and mortality ties into a historical conversation about how cinema addresses human fragility. Historically, films have often shied away from directly addressing terminal illness, instead using it as a plot device. We Live in Time, however, integrates the subject as an essential part of its emotional architecture, aligning it with more recent films that explore the human experience of illness with sensitivity and realism. In doing so, the film adds to a body of work that challenges audiences to confront the inevitability of time and loss while also celebrating the moments of beauty and connection that make life meaningful. The historical resonance of the film also lies in its exploration of love stories told across time. Cinema has often presented love as timeless or invincible, but We Live in Time complicates this notion by showing how love persists even as time reshapes it. This approach can be seen as part of a long history of films and literature that grapple with the tension between permanence and impermanence, from classic novels to modern dramas. The film is firmly rooted in that artistic lineage, making it part of a much larger cultural conversation about how we remember, how we love, and how we face mortality. When considering franchise connections, while We Live in Time does not exist within a cinematic universe, there are still intertextual elements that act like Easter eggs for attentive viewers. Subtle references in dialogue or imagery echo themes seen in earlier works by the director and screenwriter, creating a continuity of artistic vision rather than narrative continuity. For audiences familiar with the creative team's prior films, these recurring motifs and choices feel like callbacks, situating the movie within the personal franchise of its creator's artistic development. It is also important to note the cultural context in which the film was released. Contemporary audiences are living in an era where time feels particularly fragile, shaped by global events that have heightened awareness of mortality and human connection. We Live in Time reflects this cultural moment by offering a story that directly engages with themes of impermanence and meaning, making it historically relevant even though it does not dramatize real-world events directly. Its themes resonate with modern viewers precisely because they reflect broader historical anxieties and desires for connection. Some viewers may interpret the film as a commentary on how modern relationships navigate the pressures of time and uncertainty. In this sense, while not explicitly tied to historical events, the film carries cultural weight, offering a mirror to contemporary struggles around love, health, and the fleeting nature of life. It dramatizes universal human experiences in a way that feels both timeless and timely, giving it a historical significance in how it captures the emotional atmosphere of its release period. Ultimately, We Live in Time is not about expanding a franchise or dramatizing a precise historical record. Instead, it situates itself within the larger cinematic and cultural history of films that use memory, love, and mortality as central subjects. By echoing earlier works, engaging with contemporary cultural conversations, and contributing to the ongoing artistic tradition of exploring time through human relationships, it secures its place in the broader history of cinema. Rather than depending on sequels, prequels, or a shared universe, the film establishes its impact by adding a meaningful chapter to the lineage of romantic dramas that continue to resonate across generations. We Live in Time was produced on a modest budget estimated between $10 and $20 million, which puts it in the category of mid-range dramas rather than large studio blockbusters. From what appears on screen, the film manages to look richer than its price tag would suggest, relying on strong cinematography, authentic set design, and carefully chosen locations instead of flashy effects. Much of the budget seems to have gone toward securing a talented cast, with Florence Pugh and Andrew Garfield delivering performances that elevate the story while giving the film marquee value. This balance of costs meant the production could deliver a polished and emotionally resonant film without overspending on spectacle. At the box office, We Live in Time performed strongly for its genre. Domestically, it earned around $24.7 million, while international markets contributed another $32.7 million, bringing the worldwide total to about $57.5 million. For a film in the romantic drama category, which typically does not generate blockbuster numbers, this performance is a significant success. The release strategy played an important role in this outcome. The movie opened in a very limited number of theaters before expanding, allowing word of mouth and critical acclaim to build momentum. This type of rollout is a common strategy for films with strong performances and emotional storytelling at their core, helping them reach audiences gradually but effectively. Financially, the return on investment looks solid. If we take a midpoint budget estimate of around $15 million, the worldwide box office shows nearly a 4x multiplier, which is healthy even after accounting for distribution costs and marketing. Marketing expenses for a film of this size are typically much smaller than those for blockbuster franchises, so the break-even point was likely reachable well before the total crossed $50 million. Ancillary markets such as streaming, television licensing, and home media sales will add to the long-term profitability, ensuring the film continues to earn beyond its theatrical run. The overall impression is that We Live in Time punched above its weight. It does not rely on expensive effects or extravagant set pieces, yet it delivers an emotionally powerful experience that resonates with audiences worldwide. The careful control of budget, the effective use of its cast, and the deliberate release plan combine to make the film a financial success relative to its scale. While it cannot compete with blockbuster totals, it never needed to. Instead, it succeeded by targeting a specific audience, earning strong word of mouth, and delivering a cinematic experience that looks and feels more expensive than the numbers behind it. This combination makes the film a textbook example of how mid-range dramas can thrive in today's market. We Live in Time is a film that blends romance, drama, and emotional intensity in a way that makes the viewing experience highly dependent on how and where you watch it. For audiences in the United States, the movie has been released both theatrically and later through digital platforms, giving viewers the chance to decide whether to see it on the big screen or at home. Each option offers a different kind of experience, and the choice depends on how deeply you want to immerse yourself in the story. Seeing We Live in Time in theaters is arguably the most impactful way to experience the film. The big screen amplifies the sweeping visuals, the subtle shifts in lighting, and the carefully crafted cinematography that mirror the emotional journey of the characters. Director John Crowley has a style that leans on visual storytelling, where framing and pacing matter as much as dialogue. In theaters, these details feel larger than life, and the sound design allows the music and quiet moments of silence to wash over the audience with intensity. Watching it with an audience can also heighten the emotions, as gasps, tears, and laughter shared collectively create a unique energy. For viewers who value a cinematic experience and want to see Florence Pugh and Andrew Garfield's performances in their most powerful form, the theater is the best choice. For those who prefer the comfort of home, We Live in Time is also available to rent or purchase digitally. This option allows viewers to pause, reflect, or even re-watch certain key moments that may carry hidden layers of meaning. Given how symbolic the movie is, with visual motifs and metaphors woven throughout the story, having the ability to revisit scenes can be especially rewarding. Watching at home on a large television with good speakers still preserves much of the intended impact, and for audiences who want to take their time with the film, this method might be ideal. Headphones can also create a surprisingly intimate experience, drawing you into the performances with a level of focus that a theater might not allow. Streaming platforms provide another level of accessibility. Once the film finds its way to major streaming services, it will reach audiences who may not have been able to catch it in theaters. For casual viewers or those who simply want to enjoy a moving story without making a special trip, streaming is a convenient option. However, the downside is that streaming often encourages multitasking, and We Live in Time is a film that deserves undivided attention. The emotional nuances, small glances, and visual storytelling can easily be missed if you are distracted, which could weaken the overall impact. If you choose streaming, the best way to maximize the experience is to watch in a quiet setting, ideally at night, when you can immerse yourself fully. Another consideration is rewatchability. This is a film that rewards multiple viewings, as its symbolism and emotional beats grow more powerful when you revisit them. Renting or purchasing digitally ensures you can watch again and pick up on details you may have missed the first time. It also makes it easier to share with friends or family, sparking conversations about its themes of love, time, and loss. The ability to pause during emotionally heavy moments can also give some viewers a chance to process the story at their own pace, making the home option appealing for those who find the subject matter deeply affecting. Ultimately, the right way to watch We Live in Time depends on what you value most in your viewing experience. If you want scale, immersion, and the collective emotion of an audience, the theater is unmatched. If you want control, intimacy, and the opportunity to revisit its layered storytelling, home viewing through rental or purchase is ideal. And if you want accessibility and convenience, streaming will eventually make it easy to experience the film at your own pace. No matter the format, what remains consistent is that the movie delivers a powerful emotional journey, one that resonates across any screen size when given proper attention. If you enjoyed this video and would like us to provide reviews of every kind of movie, please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. Have a great day, and we'll see you in the next video.
Goodbye.